Shanice once believed she had already made it through the darkest chapter of her life. After too much pain, after too many times forcing herself to wear a smile and pretend she was fine in front of other people, she had started to believe that Ted was the sign of a new beginning. Not because he was perfect, and not because their love was flawless, but because when she was with him, Shanice no longer felt like she had to run from her past with every breath. In Ted, she saw a rare kind of peace, the kind of peace that could make a woman who had grown used to instability suddenly dare to hope again. To Shanice, that was more frightening than happiness itself. Hope was always the thing that made people weak. And just when she had started to believe her life was entering a better season, the past chose to return, without knocking, without warning, and it tore through the thinnest, most fragile layers of defense she had left. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. Everything I create is only speculation and personal opinion. If you find this video interesting and helpful, please support me with a like and leave a comment. Shanice had once spoken about Ted with a tone that was both tender and cautious. She did not speak of him as if he were some impulsive romance or a temporary distraction during the unstable months of her life. She spoke of him as if he were a shelter she still did not dare to believe was real. In her deepest thoughts, Shanice knew Ted was not only the man who made her feel loved, but also the one who made her long to become a better version of herself. When she was with Ted, she no longer wanted to keep living by pure survival instinct, by secrets buried so deeply, by suspicion toward every glance around her. She wanted to live like an ordinary woman, someone who could love, who could dream about tomorrow, who could believe that the ugliest parts of her life had truly been left behind. That was why, whenever she spoke of Ted, Shanice carried a fragility unlike anything she had ever shown before. It was the joy of someone daring to place her heart at risk one more time, but also the fear of someone who understood all too well that if even one secret came to light, everything would collapse. What Shanice never expected was that disaster would not come from familiar enemies, but from someone who shared her own blood. The name Monica had once been a locked void in Shanice's memory, a piece of her life she had tried to cut away in order to keep going. To everyone around her, Shanice rarely spoke about her family, and even less about having a sister. Because mentioning Monica also meant summoning everything Shanice wanted buried: shame, inferiority, bitterness, and an emotional debt that could never truly be repaid. But beyond the gates pushed everything into the exact orbit of tragedy when it revealed a shocking truth: Monica was Shanice's biological sister. Not an old acquaintance, not some random woman appearing out of curiosity, but the one person holding the key to the past Shanice had exhausted herself trying to seal shut. Monica's unusual interest in Shanice's life, especially in her relationship with Ted, did not come from sisterly concern. It was a twisted mixture of possessiveness, jealousy, resentment, and cold calculation. Monica did not believe Shanice deserved happiness that easily. In her eyes, her younger sister had always been the one who abandoned the family to run toward a different life, leaving Monica behind in the wreckage of mistakes, consequences, and secrets no one wanted to claim. Monica looked at Shanice and saw a woman trying to be reborn by denying everything that had happened before. That filled her with rage. She could not accept that Shanice was allowed to be loved, to start over, to be seen through gentle eyes while their shared past had never truly been dealt with. On a deeper level, Monica also saw Ted as an opportunity. He was not only important to Shanice. He was the perfect leverage to strike at the weakest place in her sister's heart. If Shanice wanted to build happiness on a foundation of lies, Monica intended to rip out every single brick with her own hands. Shanice was so shocked by Monica's sudden appearance that she nearly went numb. The shock was not only in the fact that her sister had returned without warning, but in the way Monica stepped back into her life with a calm so chilling it was almost unbearable. As if the years of separation had never existed. That entrance carried none of the warmth of a reunion. It felt like a calculated visit, a carefully staged display of power. Monica did not come alone. She brought a child with her. And that child was what truly terrified Shanice. The moment Shanice saw the child, her face changed in a way she could not hide. It was no longer mere discomfort or confusion. It was primal terror. Because the greatest secret Shanice had buried for all these years was that this child was directly tied to the past she had spent so long denying. It was not simply Monica's child, as others might assume. The child was living proof of an old tragedy, of a fateful night that had destroyed the bond between the two sisters and forced Shanice to live with crushing guilt. Years earlier, in a state of desperation and fear, Shanice had made a decision she believed was the only way to survive. She left. And she left Monica alone to bear the consequences of a disaster involving family, money, and a child born from a chain of terrible choices. Some truths are even more brutal than infidelity or betrayal in love. Some truths strike at the core of who a person is, who abandoned whom at the moment they were needed most, who stayed silent and let another carry the blame, who kept walking by crushing what remained of someone else's life. The child Monica brought was not just a reminder, it was a weapon. From the very beginning, the atmosphere between the sisters smelled like gunpowder. There was no softness of blood ties, no pause for longing, and certainly no chance to heal. Every look Monica gave Shanice felt like a blade cutting open the layers of protection Shanice had worked so hard to build. Shanice tried to stay composed, but panic had already begun racing through her body. She understood that Monica had not come to visit, and certainly not to offer blessings. She had come to see how long her sister could hold herself together before shattering. The conversation quickly turned tense because Monica did not waste time circling around the point. She pushed Shanice straight to the edge with pointed remarks about the past, about debts left unpaid, about names that should have stayed buried but could now come back to life at any moment. The harder Shanice tried to stay calm, the more Monica seemed to enjoy the trembling fear beneath that restraint. What drove Shanice nearly mad was not only the threat itself, but the way Monica used truth as a moral excuse for destroying her sister. Monica was not furious in a sudden, explosive way. Her anger had been brewing for years, cold, thick, strategic. It was the kind of hatred that made a person willing to wait until the other had reached the happiest moment of their life before striking, so that the fall would be more painful, more humiliating, and beyond repair. The truth Monica was threatening to expose was powerful enough to destroy not only Shanice's relationship with Ted, but also the image Shanice had struggled to maintain in front of everyone else. The shocking secret was that Shanice had not been innocent in the tragedy that had stolen Monica's chance at a normal life. Years ago, to protect herself and out of fear of public judgment, Shanice had allowed Monica to take all the shame for an incident involving missing money, a deeply manipulative man, and the birth of a child. What happened afterward was twisted beyond recognition, and Monica became the outcast, rejected by the family, while Shanice left with the chance to rebuild her life. The child Monica had brought with her was the most vivid living proof of a chapter from the past that Shanice had never told Ted about. More than that, Monica deliberately made Shanice believe that if the truth ever came out, Ted would not only be disappointed, but would see her as a liar. A woman who had built her present love on a foundation of filthy silence. Shanice reacted violently as the argument escalated. But her anger was not directed entirely at Monica. Part of her wanted to strangle the truth all over again, wanted to force her sister out of her life at any cost. The other part rose up against herself, because she knew Monica was not completely wrong. Because deep down, Shanice had never forgiven herself. She had convinced herself that leaving had been about survival, that some situations force people into selfishness. But when the path stood before her through Monica's eyes and through the presence of that child, every excuse suddenly looked cowardly. Shanice was furious at Monica for threatening her, but she was even more furious because she realized she was still the same person she used to be, weak, one-cornered, willing to hide the truth to protect a fragile piece of happiness. Shanice's life was clearly far more complicated than anyone had ever seen. Beneath the surface of a woman trying to step into a peaceful chapter was a shattered inner world where guilt and the desperate need to be loved were tearing each other apart. Was Monica truly happy for her sister's happiness? The answer was no. What she felt when she looked at Shanice was not joy, but the cruelty of someone who believed justice had to be delivered through suffering. To Monica, Shanice having Ted, having a chance at love, having light at the end of the tunnel, was an insult. She did not want her sister dead, nor did she want Shanice to lose everything in a simple, quick way. What Monica wanted was for Shanice to live through the experience of being stripped bare layer by layer, to taste the despair of seeing happiness so close and still being unable to hold on to it. That was also where Monica's special interest in Ted came from. She wanted to know exactly how important he was to Shanice, wanted to measure her sister's greatest weakness so she could strike precisely there. The more Monica realized Shanice truly loved Ted, the more determined she became to use him as the instrument that would bring her sister's entire world crashing down. The deeper tragedy was that Shanice was not entirely happy with Ted, at least not in any complete sense. She loved him, needed him, longed for a future with him, but she had never once felt that she truly deserved it. Every peaceful moment with Ted came with a shadow. The more love she received, the larger that shadow grew. Ted's gentleness did not heal Shanice's guilt. It only sharpened it. She was terrified that the truth would not only drive him away, but also force him to realize that the woman he loved had never been honest with him. In Shanice's mind, Ted was not just a lover. He was a potential witness to her moral collapse. That was why every time she imagined losing him, she did not just fear loneliness. She feared being seen in the darkest, ugliest truth of who she really was. And then the thing she feared most happened. The sisters' argument did not remain entirely private. In Beyond the Gates, no secret is ever allowed to die quietly. Their anger exploded too violently, and the emotions they had repressed for too long finally pushed them both past the point of control. In the moment, Shanice thought she still had enough composure to force everything back down into a lower tone. It had already gone too far. A third person had heard them. That person was Ted. Ted's reaction was not loud, and that was exactly what made it terrifying. He did not rush in like a hero, did not erupt into immediate rage, did not create some predictable emotional explosion. He stood in the space between confusion and hurt, frozen as fragments of truth fell from the sisters' argument in front of him. For Ted, the greatest shock was not that Shanice had a secret sister, nor even the unsettling presence of the child. What hurt him most was realizing that the woman he trusted had been living inside a fog of deception he had never been allowed to enter. The feeling of being shut out of the truth left him not only disappointed, but deeply insulted. For Ted, love had always been inseparable from honesty. He might have been able to forgive the past, but it was far harder for him to accept being turned into an outsider in the present life of the woman he loved. And yet Ted was not a completely spotless man entering this battle either. Monica's arrival forced him to question not only Shanice, but even his own instincts. He began to wonder whether he had loved the real woman, or only the version of Shanice she had chosen to let him see. His anger therefore did not erupt in any simple way. It burned slowly, cold, sharp, dangerous. He felt betrayed, and yet he still could not completely let go of the urge to protect Shanice from the destructive force Monica had brought with her. That was the contradiction dragging Ted into a war he had never prepared for. If he stood by Shanice, was he helping sustain a lie? If he turned his back on her, was he delivering her straight into the hands of the demon that her past had become? Meanwhile, Monica saw the fracture spreading across Ted's face and almost tasted victory. But that victory was not clean. Because the closer she came to destroying Shanice's life, the more she had to face another truth. The hatred that had sustained her all these years had become part of her identity. Even if Shanice collapsed completely, Monica would never get back the years she had lost, never reclaim her youth, and certainly never repair what that child had already been forced to endure. Yet she kept going, because some people live in pain for so long that they no longer know how to exist outside the role of the one demanding repayment. From here, everything could only get worse. Shanice was pushed into the cruelest choice of all: keep hiding the truth and lose Ted when it finally exploded in the worst possible way. Or confess everything herself and accept being seen with disgust, being judged, being stripped of the image she had worked so hard to build. Ted was pulled into a moral labyrinth where love was no longer a simple feeling, but a test of trust and of how much pain he could bear. Monica stood at the border between revenge and self-destruction, because every step she took toward exposing her sister also dragged her deeper into darkness. What made this story so dangerous was not one secret alone, but the fact that every character had a reason for doing the wrong thing. Shanice hid the truth because she was afraid of losing the rare good thing she had found. Monica dug up the past because she believed she alone had the right to enforce justice. Ted struggled between love and fury, between saving a relationship and protecting his own self-respect. No one was entirely innocent. No one could walk away from this war without being wounded. And that was the most devastating twist of all. Sometimes the most horrifying secret is not who the child really is, not what Monica knows, and not even how Ted will react. The most terrifying secret is that Shanice, from beginning to end, always knew this day would come. She was never truly living in happiness. She was only living in delay before collapse. Ted was not complete salvation, but a fragile reward she was trying to hold on to at any cost, even if it meant continuing to lie. And Monica did not merely want to expose her sister. She wanted Shanice to feel every beat of her own life breaking apart, to understand that some debts are never erased, only repaid through equal suffering. If that secret comes fully into the light, Shanice will not only lose Ted, she will lose control over the story of who she is. And in Beyond the Gates, once you lose control of your own story, someone else will write it in blood, tears, and merciless vengeance.